Welcome to Gunsite. I am Jeff Cooper, director of the American Pistol Institute, which is the most active branch of the Gunsite Training Center, which is the fountainhead of the modern technique of small arms. What you are about to see is an overview of the basic principles of defensive pistolcraft. A good pistol is the best means known with which to defend yourself against a personal, lethal adversary. And yet the pistol itself is worthless without the skill to use it precisely, swiftly, and safely. What you're going to see now is the systems used to impart that skill to a student coming through here to learn the art of defensive pistolcraft.
Jeff Cooper is the world-renowned expert in defensive weaponcraft and is responsible for the most revolutionary advances in pistolcraft. His contributions have earned him the title Father of Modern Combat Pistol Shooting. Now let's go to the famous Gunsite Ranch and begin the instruction that will help you gain self-reliance and become more expert in the art of defensive pistolcraft. Don't buy a pistol and then assume you're safe. Let's listen to Jeff Cooper explain why, as he demonstrates different types of handguns and tells us of the 5 elements of practical shooting.
The best personal defense is a proper state of mind. And once the subject knows what he, or in this case, I will be modern and say he or she intends to do about defending himself, herself, or itself, at that point, the question of a firearm does become relevant. It is very dangerous and very unsound to buy a firearm and feel that you are now safer than you were before. Well, you are no more armed because you own a firearm than you are a musician because you own a guitar. The instrument is not the answer. The skill to use it is the answer. And that's what we must teach.
What kind of weapon should I choose? Listen.
It is often suggested that for the unpracticed hand, the double-action revolver of this type is safer. That is, it's less dangerous to the user. Obviously, we don't want a weapon that is safe to the intruder. But there are people who maintain that this weapon is a safer weapon to have in untrained hands. I am very uneasy about that attitude because I don't like any weapon in untrained hands. Of course, I cannot change the world, so I have to accept the fact that there are people who are going to buy firearms who don't know what they're going to do with them. Now, under that very unfortunate circumstance, I would say that a double-action revolver of good quality is probably the best bet. You don't have to get them this big. They come smaller, that size. This is very definitely not even Plan B. This is Plan C. If you have to give a weapon to somebody who doesn't understand weapons. But for a person who understands weapons, the automatic pistol, or semi-automatic pistol, actually is superior in all sorts of ways. It's, in the first place, a lot easier to learn to shoot well, because you do not have to learn to manage that double-action trigger. Now, this is a full-size 1911, the kind that I carry most of the time and the kind that I recommend. It's very convenient for a person who has a stature for it, but it's a little bit big. And there are people who, in the first place, don't have the body mass to wear one of these things comfortably, and there are a good many people who can't make it from here to here with the hand. Unfortunately, there's not much has been done about that in recent times. I think it would be the next step, not so much the double-action auto, but producing semi-automatic pistol which was shorter from here to here and narrower from here to here. We find that about half of our women students and about a quarter of our men students can't get their hands around this. So you can get a smaller weapon, such as that. The reach is still not taken out. This is a full-power gun. This is a 45, but it's made out of light metals and it packs away neatly. This is a good choice. The smallness of size of the weapon makes the piece a little bit harder to use. Small size and lightweight are conveniences for portability, but they do make the weapon harder to use. The lighter the weapon, the more it kicks for the same cartridge. And the smaller the weapon, the lighter it is, and it brings out certain other disadvantages. So the matter of bulk, of size, does intrude. But there's no question in my mind but what the major caliber semi-automatic pistol is the most efficient defensive device we've come up with yet.
The second element, the Weaver stance.
The Weaver stance is an essential part of the modern technique. I would say that in most cases in which you are apt to use a handgun to defend yourself, you will use the Weaver stance. There are other systems, and we touch upon them. But because of the probabilities, we emphasize the Weaver stance over everything else. It's impossible to speak statistically because very few people have lethal encounters, and when they do, each encounter could be an exception. But somewhere on the order of 8 out of 10 defensive pistol situations call for the Weaver stance. Now, the stance is the entire body, from the feet to the top of the head. But the heart of the stance is the grip. Now, anyone can call anything he wants, but essentially a grip is what you do with your hand. That is a stock. If you want to call it a grip, it's all right with me, but for purposes of this instruction, that is a stock and that is a grip. Possibly we had better take the round out of the chamber before we start playing. Two essentials of the grip are the centering of the hand behind the thruster recoil and the placement of the hand as high as you can make it work. The pistol recoils while the projectile is still in the barrel. Not very much, but just a little bit, enough to affect your placement of your shot. Therefore, if you place your hand on the weapon in a way that is not centered, you're going to get a deflection action on discharge. If you put your hand on your pistol like that, the pistol will recoil away from the wrist. So the idea is to put the bones of the wrist in line with the barrel and the forearm in line with the bones of the wrist. So that wherever you point, you are pointing essentially with your arm and not with a pistol barrel like this. The first point is to get it straight behind. The second point is to get it high. You don't want to grab it down here. We call that the Patagonian grip. And obviously, the lower you place your hand on the weapon, the more upward rotation there's going to be. People who complain about the recoil of a heavy pistol simply do not know how to put their hand on it. Because if you put your hand on it correctly, you don't have any problem with recoil. If the hand is placed properly on the weapon, the recoiling effect on discharge is negligible, without regard to the charge or the size of the weapon. For example, I can fire this piece with thumb and forefinger, without any effect in here. That's just thumb and forefinger. And it does away with the notion that you should be concerned about the recoiling action of the weapon. Now, the hand is so placed that the pad of the hand abuts upon the mainspring housing here. You don't put that back in there, you put it there. Your fingers are wherever they're most comfortable, but high enough so that the second finger touches the trigger guard. The index finger intersects the trigger so that the pad of the finger, not the crease nor the tip, but the pad touches the center of the trigger. Now, with weapons of this type, it's possible to obtain triggers of various lengths to suit the length of your finger. That's one of the advantages of having an old-style weapon. But this one is set up for me. Now, over here, the thumb. It is imperative that the thumb be carried on top of the safety, not below. Now, there are some who don't understand that, but I can tell you from experience that if you carry your thumb below the safety, sooner or later you're going to knock that safety on by mistake and put yourself out of the running. Don't carry your thumb under the safety. In addition, the grip is such that the knuckles of the thumb and the forefinger should be horizontal. If you drop your thumb down there, you get a lack of support and a sense of torquing action. But the important part of it is to make sure that the safety is always under your thumb and that you don't get in trouble that way. Obviously, if you are left-handed, you will call for a safety on the other side of the weapon. But if you're not left-handed, you do not need that, because then with the left hand you can operate that safety just as well, perhaps not just as fast, but just as well in those occasions when you've broken your right arm or taken a shot or something like that. Now, there is your firing grip, and it is slightly different with the revolver, so let's look at that. With the revolver, the principles are the same, although the structure of the weapon makes the actual positioning of the hand somewhat different. This is called a recoil shoulder. And again, to get the weapon properly supported, you should place your hand high enough so that you can just barely see that recoil shoulder. This is working against you. Get your hand up on the weapon. Place your hand directly behind the weapon, again, so that the back strap intersects the pad of your hand here and not the fold. There. The thumb can be carried either high on the latch or down there. It's optional. I've seen it done both ways and done very well. Personally, I find that with a Smith, if I carry my thumb up there where the recoil is, if the recoil is heavy, as with a 44 Magnum, I sometimes get a little bit abused in there, but that's easily corrected by putting a stock on here which brings you back. I don't fancy custom stocks on automatic pistols, but revolvers sometimes call for them. These stocks are so made as to fill this gap down here so you don't have the problem of cranking your hand. when you're with the revolver, since you're going to shoot it most of the time in the trigger cocking mode, like that, you do not put the tip of your pad of your finger on the trigger. You go all the way in to where the first crease intersects the right side. So, and your firing stroke is there. That approximately the same as with the auto, those slight differences. Since the grip is approximately the same on the revolver and the auto, I'll go ahead with the stance using the auto. The Weaver stance is a function of the entire body from the feet to the top of the head. And the first thing that makes it look unusual is that the body is more or less square to the target. When the flag flies, it's necessary to cover as much ground with your peripheral vision as possible, so that if you're coming into an action, you want to face into it pretty much so that you can look both ways at the same time. There may be other problems. That doesn't mean you square your feet exactly. Most people find that they're a little bit more comfortable by dropping the right foot back slightly. Obviously, this is for a right-hander. But don't drop it back to there. That makes you unstable and makes it difficult for you to address targets on your left. You are, in effect, denying your left side. And remember that these techniques are not range techniques, they are street techniques, and you don't know what type of a situation you're getting into. Now, we've showed you the grip. Here's the grip. The stance, so, note that the feet are planted squarely, about a half step apart. The knees are straight, the hips are level, the shoulder is level, the head is erect. Clearly there are variations upon this, but I'm showing you the system which we suggest first. If you find that anatomical differences make it necessary for you to modify for your purposes, okay. Now, I'm going to point in that direction because I have a prejudice against pointing at the camera. There is the stance. Note that the arm is extended from the right shoulder. The right arm is as straight as you can get it or slightly bent. I personally favor a slightly bent right arm because it's stronger. But there are very good shots who shoot with a straight arm. The inventor of the stance, however, Jack Weaver, always shot with a slightly bent arm, and I favor it somewhat. So let's bring it down to about there, but don't let the elbow flex out to the side. That'll involve a problem here of lack of support against recoil. You want to shoot right down your forearm in such a fashion. Keep your head up. Do not bring your head down to your pistol. Bring your pistol up to your head. It's easier on your muscles. You will use both eyes if you can. If you're fortunate enough to have one eye which is distinctly master, leave both eyes open and allow nature to take its course. Here I am shooting with my right eye, and now I'm shooting with my left eye. That's all the difference I have to make. So whether you are right or left-eyed is unimportant. Either one will do shooting with the right arm. If, on the other hand, your eyes are not master, that is, they're about the same, and that happens, then it probably is a good idea for you to dim your left eye slightly. I have to do this because I am slightly left-eyed, not very much, but it's easier and it's a better teaching technique for me to shoot right-handed with the right eye. So I slightly dim my left eye. But by choice, you'll use both eyes at once. Now, with your head up and your hand there, what do you do with your left hand? So, the left hand is placed on the weapon vertical, with the palm vertical and the thumb up. It clasps the pistol with the two hands clapping together. Do not allow the left hand to come down here. This is called palming it. And of course, if you want to get fancy, you can use one of the cinematographic things where you shoot like this. This is pretty good. Now, the answer is to keep your hands together and to keep the fingers together and the thumb high. Now, the index finger. Many expert shots carry the index finger forward there, and we don't insist that you do not. However, our teachings here have established pretty well that you have better recoil control when your hand is underneath the trigger guard. For the obvious reason, you see, the pistol tends to rotate here, and if you put your hand there, you have more leverage against damping it. It's optional, but we suggest you try this system first. The right thumb is on the safety, so, and the left thumb, by choice, is placed on top of the right thumb. There are those, again, who carry the thumb down here. But you want to watch that. There's a tendency there to operate that safety inadvertently. And so it gets worse if you get one of these elaborate extended slide stops. Then if you carry your thumb down there, you'll lock the action open without intending to. Now, but the essence of the Weaver stance is the isometric push-pull between the right hand and the left. That's what makes it Weaver as opposed to any other two-handed stance. You push with the right and you pull with the left. The pressure in here builds you into a tank turret so that the pistol itself represents the gun, the hands, the mantlet mounting system, and the shoulders, the turret itself. So in a proper Weaver stance, you can change your action this way without ever flexing anything in here. It's important in your training to remember that you do not let your wrists and elbows flex. If you do that, every time you take a firing position, you're going to have to find it again. In your hunting or ready position down here with your thumb on the safety and the finger straight, if you want to go on target, note that the angle of my wrist is not going to change. Like that. If you do this, you have to find it again. You have unlocked yourself. Marksmanship is essentially a matter of programmed reflexes. And if you concentrate heavily on programming your reflexes, you can pick up very good technique in a very short time. If you have to find yourself every time you start again, it'll take you years to learn this. This way we can do it in a week or so. So, remember that your position here remains constant. There's your firing stance, there's your rest stance. The only difference is that you pivoted from the shoulders and put your elbow against your side. This is your rest stance, and this is your covering stance. If you are expecting trouble, you stand this way with your finger straight. Remember, you don't put your finger on the trigger until your sights are on the target. Your safety on. If you take a blow in this position, if something hits you, you won't have an accidental discharge. And you cannot move any faster than that. So you are not slowing yourself down in that situation. The Weaver stance is going to do the job for you most of the time. Later on in the course, we'll show you a couple of different systems which might come up in various types of emergencies. For beginning exercises, we will start here in the ready position. We will start with the firing grip achieved with both hands, eyes on the target, fingers straight, thumb on the safety. As we say up, the safety stays behind like that. The finger finds the trigger, takes out the slack, and we shift our focus from the target to the front sight and let the hammer fall. Immediately the finger goes straight, let the thumb cocks the pistol, safety goes on, and we come back to here again. Again. Up, look, press, down. And without the count, it's simply ready, fire, down. With a revolver, it's not quite the same. The revolver, it's similar, except that we start with the finger on the trigger because the double action mode of the revolver calls for it. As the pistol rises into position and the eye shifts focus, the hammer starts back, and the alignment is line up and goes. We start here, and as we come up, we shift the eye to the front sight, and we time it so that as the eye picks up the front sight, the hammer has reached the rearward portion of its stroke, and we allow the action to proceed. Ready? Go. And again. Ready? Go. If you raise your pistol to here, your revolver, and crank through like that, there's a strong tendency to flinch. You should time it so that you work the hammer on the way up. Remember, we are using full power weapons here. We make no foolishness about reduced charges for target shooting or light loads or muzzle compensators or so on. We're using a full house blow, a fight-stopping blow that delivers a little recoil. You control it by proper use of your hands. It doesn't need to bother you at all. You can always check an experienced shot because his weapon doesn't move, almost it doesn't move at all on discharge, whereas the duffer lets it go. For example, if I were to fire here with the wrong tension in my hand, you might see something like this. Now, this is not the way to do it. I'm showing it to you wrong. That's wrong. When you put your hands together properly, you look like this. and the pistol moves no more than ½ an inch. And that's not a question of bulk or weightlifting, that's just a question of knowledge, knowing where to put your hands and how to use them.
The third element. What is the flash sight picture?
You often hear it said that you don't use the sights in combat. Well, some people don't. They miss a lot, too. I've heard people analyze the studies of the New York PD and say, well, since we find that 67.381 of police officers who fire at felons don't see the sights, we think we better teach you not to use the sights because that's what you're going to do. I get very much annoyed when people tell me how to do things wrong. The fact that 9 out of 10 people do it wrong doesn't mean you should do it wrong. And yet we have this terrible drive for equality or something. So if everybody's going to be a klutz, let's all be klutzes. Huh? Well, that's not the answer. I have a perfect example of this. I once was told that the hit score in New York was 11%. And I wrote it down. I thought my authority was good. And somebody called me up in a rage from New York and said, what do you mean 11%? Why, our hit score last year was 16%. Oh, well, pardon me all to hell. What I was talking about was 100%. Now, I can say this with some accuracy, though it's not perfect, but as you understand that not everybody who has been to school here and who has subsequently got into a fight has written me about it. But most have. It's my stock and trade. I need that information. And most people, we regard ourselves as friends, and if they get into a fight, they tell me about it. If their reports are true, the average, the hit score of Gunsite graduates is 100%. Not 11, not 16. Therein hangs the tale, huh? So, we use the sights, and we use the sights always. We even use the sights when we can't see them. Now, that may sound paradoxical to you, but we'll show you that on Thursday night. You use the sights. When the flag flies, for not just marksmanship reasons, but for mental concentration and other things, when the flag flies, the thing that flashes in your head is front sight. Up to that point, you may have been talking, gee, am I in trouble? Am I going to have to shoot my way out of this? Who are those guys? What happens if I win? What happens if I lose? All that may be flashing through your mind. But once you decide to go, front sight in your mind. Now, what do we mean by a sight picture? A sight picture is illustrated in the books this way. Now, let's see here. Getting spastic today. With a square front post and a bullseye and a square rear sight. Now, that's the kind of sights most of us have. Square, square, square. But it's quite obvious that you can't see this, this, and this in the same focus because they're a different distance from your eye. Now, with a pistol, the sights are so close together so that when you're out there, the difference in focus between there and there is not very great. But the difference between there and there is great. You cannot focus on the target and focus on the front sight at the same time. It is not physiologically possible. So, since you can't see them both, what do you look at? Well, you let the target fur itself out, and you look at that.
Remember that it's essential to focus on your front sight and not on the target. Watch while the camera changes focus. Focus out. Now you see you're looking at the target. That is not what you do when you shoot. When you shoot, you look at your front sight. Focus in. Got that? Focus out. Focus in. When the action starts, you will be looking at your adversary. As your pistol comes on the line, you must remember to change your focus to the front sight. Focus in. Focus out. Focus in. That is your shooting picture.
Now that is your sight picture. And what do we mean by a flash sight picture? A flash sight picture means an instantaneous pickup. The target shot does this. He picks up his target out there, he aligns his sights very carefully, and he gently presses the trigger until at such point when it's right on, he's got a 10. A combat shot can't do that. He hasn't got that much time.
A combat shot starts either in the holster or in combat ready. And he says, up, sit, down. That's a flash sight picture. You have to get used to the idea that you can pick up your front sight and its alignment with the rear sight like that. So that this evening, after we've done some shooting this way, your homework will be just that. It'll be down here, thumb on the safety, fingers straight, eyes on the target. Okay, as you come up, safety stays behind, slack comes out of the trigger, eye goes to there, and when you're on, and come down. Don't wait. As soon as you can pick up that front sight, let it go. Up, look, press down. And that's the way you achieve a flash sight picture. And you'll do that tonight until you learn that you can never do it any other way. Then we can go on to higher and nobler things tomorrow.
The fourth element, the compressed surprise break.
A surprise break is this. I start the pressure between here and here, and I just increase it. And very gently, I increase it. And sooner or later, sometime before the sun goes down, something's going to happen there. That's going to happen. But I didn't know. I didn't know when. That was a surprise break. There are 3 trigger control systems that can be used in marksmanship. One is the open-end surprise break, which I just showed you. The other is the compressed surprise break. And the third is the nudge, which we will not discuss in this text because it doesn't fly. But the combat shooter uses the compressed surprise break. Instead of saying anytime, it went, didn't it? Instead of saying anytime, you say this. You say sometime between now and now. And it's the dial. Maybe take a 5-second stroke, huh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the slack out. Note you always do that. There's always slack in an automatic trigger, so you take that out and you start there. Now, when the slack is taken out, you start the pressure in such a way that sometime before 5 it's going to go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Didn't make it to 5. But I didn't know when that was going to happen. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of those surprised me. I didn't know the exact instant. Now, when you learn this, you pick up your speed. You say 1, 2, 3. You say 1, 2. You say 1, 2. But every time that was a surprise. I never got on the thing and said, go. If you get on the target and say, go, you've got a real bad problem, and we hope we can save you. Yeah, $1 million flinch. Actually, we don't use the term flinch around here. It implies some things we don't really mean to suggest, but we call it pushing or leaning on the shot. You get out there and you say, there it is, you want to help that round, so you go, ugh! You don't need to help that round. It will take care of itself. You must think of yourself as a carrier deck. You don't jump off the carrier deck, you say, take off. You hold the carrier deck level and the airplane takes off. So in this case, you say, let it happen. Don't force it. Let it happen. And that is a compressed surprise break. Now, I mentioned that those of you who can't see the front sight will be half of the people who have trouble with this class. The other half will be the people who can't surprise themselves with that break. And I can say this, firing in action is a little bit easier than firing on the range, because in action, you know that you have to make it work. So in my own case, and my action record is better than most, I have always made an issue of saying when there's blood out there, either a dangerous animal or a human adversary, is front sight and let it surprise you. You'll be surprised how quick that happens. In other words, you don't say, you're not waiting around. The guy may be shooting at you. Or maybe this lion is coming right at your muzzle, but you say, front sight, let it surprise, like that, and you got him. And all is well. If you get out there and start leaning on him, you've lost the game. But it's easier in the field because you can tell how important it is. And the secret of successful field shooting is to tell yourself on each occasion that this is the only shot in the world that ever mattered. This is the William Tell shot. This is the apple on your son's head. This shot, now. And only thus can you get the proper concentration to put this thing together. Concentration is what marksmanship is. Or you could say concentration and self-control.
Element number 5, the presentation. What is the proper way for me to present my weapon?
Nothing about drawing the pistol is dangerous if the person doing it knows how to do it. But there are people who don't know how, and consequently you hear of leg shots and other forms of accidents. They only happen to people who haven't been educated. Now, with the auto pistol, the technique is similar, but not quite the same as a revolver. I will show it to you with the auto pistol. The pistol is normally carried on the belt in condition 1, with the hammer back and the safety on. Now, to avoid trouble, I always look first before I check. That's a press check to show you that there's no shell in the chamber. Now, we will start on the assumption that this is not going to go off. On the count of 1, or grip, you move your right hand to your pistol and your left hand to a grab position at the same count. Your right hand unlatches any sort of retaining device as the grip is achieved, and it's very important to achieve a full firing grip so that you don't have to move anything after your pistol starts out. Starting the pistol out this way and grabbing it is the wrong way. Now, it's very important as a time saver to move your left hand at the same time you move your right. So on the first stroke, which is grip, you do that. Now, you can practice that for the rest of your life, and it'll be to your advantage, because you never want to miss your draw. And you only program this reflex by repetition. And, of course, you don't have to go shooting to do it. You can do this in your bedroom. In any case, grip. The second count is clear. On the second count, all that happens is the pistol is removed from the holster and nothing else. It comes to there. You do not operate the safety. You do not put your finger on the trigger. Grip, clear. Those are the first two. Now, on the third count, the pistol is moved halfway from the holster to the left hand, and the safety comes off. And on the range, we like to hear it, so we call this count click. This is different, of course, from the technique of the revolver. Grip, clear, click. Now, at the click position, you can verify your arm, verify the position of your hand, that everything is straight. You do not put your finger on the trigger. You see, your pistol is here, halfway to your left hand. Your safety has come off now, but you have not put your finger on the trigger because that comes next. Again, grip, clear, click. The next count is smack. You want to hear the hands come together. Smack! And at that point, with the auto pistol, your finger enters the trigger guard. Not until then. You see, you could get in trouble if you got out of time, but you're not going to get out of time. Now, in this position, all the way up to now, you've kept your eyes on the target and your left elbow against your side. You have put your finger on the trigger, but you have not taken out the slack. So, again, grip, clear, click, smack. Now, a lot of things happen. The last count is look, and that calls your attention to your front sight. So, you force your left arm away from your body with your right, come up the line, take the slack out of the trigger, and change your focus to the front sight, and stop. Even at maximum speed, you stop for a microsecond. You must stop at the top of the stroke, otherwise your shot will go over your target. So, grip, clear, click, smack, look. Now you're ready to go and let the hammer fall. So, the full stroke is grip, clear, click, smack, look, press. And when you do it correctly, of course, you don't do it staccato. You don't do it by bumps. You do it smoothly, in this fashion. Ready? Go. Grip, clear, click, smack, look, press. And that's the way you get a hit. Now, it's very important that you do that for smoothness. Get smooth. Smooth is the ultimate aim. Smoothness, not speed. As soon as you're smooth and those actions take place in proper sequence, then there's no problem in your going fast. But don't go for speed until you have smoothness. Smooth is fast.
No mechanical device has a will of its own, and guns never go off unless somebody causes them to do so. The wound delivered by a bullet can be fatal, so you cannot expect to learn by experience. If you memorize the 4 principles of firearm safety and follow them without fail, you will never have a mishap with a gun. Pay attention.
I'm going to show you the 4 safety rules which will absolutely prevent difficulty. If you learn what we're going to cover right now, and learn it well, and never violate it, you absolutely cannot have a mishap with your pistol. It's as simple as that. The 4 general rules go forever, not just here, but for the rest of your life.
Rule number 1, all guns are always loaded.
Treat all guns as if they were loaded. I do not approve of that. All guns are always loaded. And if you don't believe it, you're going to be in trouble. Now, you saw when I started teaching this morning that I took the round out of the breech of my pistol. It's over there, so I can assume that it's not where it should be, but something might have happened. So before I do anything else, I check it before I work with it. Now, when it's in my hands, and I have just looked in the breech, at that point, I can practice with it. But as soon as it goes back into the holster, it's hot again. Now, this is a matter of illusion, you see, because guns can be loaded or unloaded, but don't ever assume that. I hope that nobody in this class will ever again tell anyone he knows that his pistol is either loaded or unloaded, because it's a statement you completely disregard. If you tell me your pistol is loaded, I'll say, well, why wouldn't it be? It's like telling me you have gas in your car. If you tell me the weapon is unloaded, I'm going to say, I don't believe you. And if I tell you that mine is unloaded, don't believe me. If you don't know how to check a weapon, find out before you start messing with it. If you take a weapon from someone who has just checked it, you check it again. If I take this pistol, take the magazine out, check the chamber, and hand it to you, you check it. Don't take my word for it. Don't trust me, and don't trust anyone. And I won't trust you, and all will be well.
Rule number 2, never let the muzzle cover anything you are not willing to destroy.
This is the muzzle. That means don't point it unless you're willing to kill. Now, we don't like the term shoot to kill because defensive pistol is used to stop. But if you have to stop an adversary, your need must be so great that you don't care whether he lives or not. So if you point a pistol at somebody, you are announcing that you are willing to kill him. Not necessarily going to, but quite willing to. And if anybody ever points his pistol at you, you're going to take it that way. Never let your muzzle cover anything you are not willing to destroy. These people figure they can have a safe SWAT drill. So they get a whole bunch of guys all charging around a house, all presumably loaded with blanks, except one of them wasn't. Death. Your training systems are not important enough for you to violate these safety principles. And say, oh, well, the training won't be realistic if we're losing blanks if we don't point them at each other. Don't do it. Sooner or later, you're going to kill somebody. And that just happened this year.
Rule number 3, keep your finger off the trigger till your sights are on the target.
This is a fairly new one in the pantheon, or whatever, the doctrine. You don't see it 5 years ago. But we study these things, and over the past 5 years, I would say that 80% of the nasty mishaps that have come to my attention with firearms were caused by violation of that one. You can't see a picture of a thriller, you know, a Schwarzenegger or Stallone or somebody without having him looking like this, and like this, and like this, and like this. You don't do that. This finger is connected to that. And as long as you can't see that, you keep your finger there. With the Colt and the Browning, you can put your finger on that button and feel it. So wherever your pistol is, your finger is there until you see that, and then you take the slack out. When you see the front sight, you take out the slack. And as soon as you can't see the front sight, your finger goes straight again. The trouble with this, the obstacle here, is that the human hand is conditioned to work like that. You know, your baby will grab your finger like that. And you have to get here this week in the habit of keeping this finger disconnected from those. Important for safety reasons and important for trigger control, because if you try to fire by closing your hand, you're going to be in trouble. You've got to keep that finger straight. Keep that finger straight until you can see your sights, and don't do anything else. Now, we'll show you tomorrow when you come up on the stroke that your finger enters the trigger guard right there. But that's a continuous flowing motion, and by the time you've touched it, you can see your sights. So, when you're on target, your finger is on the trigger. When you're not on target, your finger is straight. The stroke. Ready? Sit. Down. Sit. Down.
Rule number 4, identify your target. Be sure of your target.
You know what you're shooting at. You never shoot at a sound. You never shoot at a rustling noise. You never shoot at a silhouette, a shadow, or something behind a screen. You only shoot if you know what you're shooting at. That may put your life in danger, yes, but shooting at someone is not just kind of a scare tactic. It kills. So you don't say there's somebody outside, let's throw a few shots out there and see if we can run him off. Wrong answer. You may run him off, but it also might be your son. So make sure, not only make sure of what you're shooting at, but make sure of what's on the other side and around it. Now, if you shoot properly, you won't miss, and your bullet will be so heavily involved with the target that it won't be too terribly dangerous on the other side. But in any case, whenever you see a target, take a quick thought in your mind, what's on the other side, so that you're not hazarding things out there. And this, of course, also involves the silhouettes on a hill. If you see an enemy who is on that ridge, be sure of what you're going to do now, because if just over the other side of that ridge and down in there is your base camp, you have to make certain judgments at that point. I say again, if you're careful with shooting and you hit your target, what happens beyond your target is not going to matter too much. But those are your 4 rules, and those apply always. Those are permanent. They apply yesterday, today, tomorrow, and forever. If you make those rules a part of your personality and make sure that you don't ever make a slip, ever, I'm talking about 100% functioning, you can't have a mishap. It won't happen. And that takes care of that. And that's all we have to know.
Jeff Cooper explains his techniques for making your pistol ready.
At this point, someone is bound to ask, what must I do with my sidearm to make it shootable? Well, the answer to that ought to be nothing. The manufacturers ought to furnish sidearms ready to go out of the box. The fact is, however, that they usually do not. Now, the great majority of our students here use this old antique that I'm wearing, and which was designed in the early 1900s and was adopted in 1911. The way it comes out of the box, it needs something, but it doesn't need a great deal. And we fall into the error of doing things just for the sake of doing them, rather than doing them because we need to. The first thing to remember is that your pistol must be workable for you, and it doesn't have to be workable for anybody else. If you like something, do it. But if you don't like it, don't do it just because somebody wants to sell it to you or because somebody just won a match using this particular brand of checkering. The issue is that we are far too prone to mess around with equipment just for the sake of messing around. So use your head, huh? Do things you have to do and not things you don't have to do. Now, looking at the auto pistol first, the things that you should have on an auto pistol first are a trigger you can manage, sights that you can see, and a dehorning job. Those three. Now, what is a trigger you can manage? A trigger you can manage is one that breaks clean without any apparent motion. The word was, in the old days, the glass rod. Now, there's slack in that trigger. There has to be. But after the slack is taken up, there should be no apparent motion when the trigger lets go. You could press, press, press. Nothing moves. Nothing moves. But when you finally put the pressure on, there she goes. And you couldn't feel anything move before she went. Now, obviously, she has to move. Otherwise, the trigger would not break. But the movement must be as close to imperceptible as you can get it. And that's what's called a glass rod pull. Now, the weight is considerably less important. The weight can be anything from 3 pounds to 5 pounds, and you can live with that. 4 is about right. For many years in this country, there was a flat rule in competition involving this pistol that the trigger had to weigh 4.5 pounds. Well, that was a great improvement over what came out of the box, because back in World War I, the triggers were around 9, which meant that the only way you could fire them was to grit your teeth and stamp your foot and make them go off. However, that's an improvement over our brand new gun, the Beretta, which we have now, in which the triggers on that run between 9 and 11 single action and about 24 double action. I've been astonished. I'm looking at some of these ideas the girl guides must get out there in their uniforms and go, bang, to make the damn thing go off. But this one will do well at 4. You don't have to abide by that 4.5 pound rule anymore. But that's what you want in a trigger you can manage. Now, fortunately, the triggers in revolvers are usually a good deal better. The single action release of a double action revolver is usually pretty good. Not always, but you don't have to worry as much about it as you do with the auto. The double action pull on a revolver, though, is a little tricky, because a journeyman gunsmith who doesn't really know what he's doing can make that double action pull on your revolver just as light as you want it. What happens is you don't get enough stroke to fire the round. And a lot of these special PPC pistols that you see the police using in revolver matches are just like that. Whether the shot goes off or not is just a question of how it feels in that day. So be careful of that. You want a trigger that you can manage. Without a manageable trigger, you're in trouble, because I think the single most important mechanical adjunct to a good firearm is a good trigger. I would rather, for instance, with a rifle, have a rifle with an excellent trigger and a capacity of 4 minutes of angle than I would have a rifle that had a capacity of 1 minute of the angle but had a bad trigger. Because the grouping I can take care of as long as I can make it break clean. What do we mean by sights that you can see then? Well, speaking of this gun, or that one on the wall over there, which is the original 1911, the sight picture there looks something like this. That's a little notch in the back and a sort of a bump out on front. Well, the reason that John Browning designed those sights that way was because he didn't think you were ever going to use the sights. In John Browning's opinion, he said you're going to stick it in somebody's ear and pull the trigger. What do you want sights for? Well, that's what we went to war with. Very unsatisfactory. Neither very precise nor very fast. So, in the war, we got ourselves a square front sight. But it still had a U-shaped rear like that. Now, this sight, if you have time, gives you a pretty good index of elevation, but up and down, very poor index of right and left. So we came out, and after the war, we got ourselves a pistol like this with the square front sight, the small square front sight, and a small square rear notch. And that's where the matter rests at this time. If you buy a 45 service Colt or a replica of it from Springfield, that's what you're going to get. Now, that's accurate. If you have lots of time for slow fire shooting, you can shoot very well with those sights. Some of the records have been established with those. But it's not good enough for the flash sight picture because it takes too long to see. What you want is this. This being a 1/10 or an 1/8, and being with a good deal of light on each side so you can pick it up quickly, instead of as some target sights are cutting this very thin. You don't want to do that. You want there to be enough light here so you get a good index of side to side. Now that's what you want, and that's what we call high visibility sights. Adjustable, they can be adjustable or not. Personally, I do not fancy adjustable sights. Contradiction, I'm wearing adjustable sights, sure, but I shoot a lot. I hang around here and I mess around, and over the years of competition, when I use most of these guns, we change ammunition, and sometimes you'd need to change your zero. Less often than I think now, but we used to mess around with the sights, and trying to adjust fixed sights can spoil your whole day. You know, you get in there and you wham it here, and it goes too far over there, and you wham it back, and it doesn't. What we should have and don't as a standard accessory, we've got all kinds of accessories except the ones we need, but the one we need is a sort of a U-shaped arrangement that fits over the slide like that, and has a key on this side with a worm, so that we can go half a turn and move that rear sight back and forth to adjust it for deflection. If you have an elevation problem, it usually doesn't amount to much unless you have an adjustable sight in which the elevation adjustment has broken. Then you find that the rear sight, instead of being like this, is like that. And suddenly you find that you're shooting into the head of the target at 10 yards. Well, you can find that by just looking at the sights, because one thing about a weapon that's as coarse as this one is if your sights are out of adjustment, you don't have to play with them, you can look at them. If your sights are far enough off so you're off in deflection, you look at your slide and your rear sight is way over there, sticking out to one side. It's that coarse. So sometimes we get people here at the school who say, well, I think it's my sights that's doing that. We say, well, you know, it could be. We heard of a situation once back in about 1933 in which the guy's sights actually were off. But let's go try it, and we try it. Generally speaking, it's not your sights, it's something else. But that's a high visibility sight. Now, the question comes up, do you illuminate it? Do you pretty it up with colors and things? Well, that's up to you. I don't think it makes a lot of difference. But if you're going to do anything with that front sight, I strongly suggest that you don't do it in white, because white is designed to be lost against a white shirt, not this one, or a sky, or snow. And all those things occur. So I would strongly suggest that you paint your sight some color which is not found ordinarily in nature. Don't paint it yellow or gold. Yellow or gold is lost immediately against dry grass, a khaki shirt, or, interestingly enough, a lion. So don't paint your front sight gold or yellow. When I was a boy, a great fad was for gold bead front sights. I took a gold front sight to Africa once, and I found out that was the wrong thing. Worked fine on buffalo, because buffalo are black, but it's a mess on lion. So if you're going to color that front sight, color it red or flame orange or something. Some people claim they pick it up faster. You can have an insert put in, or you can paint it with nail polish. Either will do. Of course, the nail polish wears off. Or a model airplane paint. Both of them wear off. But you can put them back on again every time you clean the gun. No big deal, huh? Now, how about illuminating the rear sight? Well, remember, you're not supposed to look that closely at the rear sight. So gadgets here designed to ease your pain in looking at the rear sight and so on are all right if they don't bother you. I took a fancy at one time to this 3-dot system, and we have put it on the Bren 10, and it was used on some of the H&K weapons. It's not bad. It gives you the black edges to give you a sharp sign if you take time, and it gives you 3 dots on a horizontal line to check your elevation. I don't think I have anything against it, but I've taken it out and used it on comparable pistols on the range here, and it doesn't do anything for me. I mean, I shoot as well one way as another. Perhaps that's not a good indication because I'm an old dog and I've learned one way and maybe it works for other people. I will say if you wish to illuminate your sights, go ahead. But don't expect that they're going to make the difference between victory and defeat. Black on black works pretty well. And it satisfies most of us. One thing I should mention, which is an exception, and that is I've seen some sights makers around, and I think there are a couple in this class that put a white cross on the front sight like that. Now that's a nifty idea if you're going to the Caribbean. You know, in the Caribbean you got zombies and werewolves and things like that. This is made to order for that. But to make it work perfectly, you should be sure that you carry a supply of silver bullets. If you got a white cross and silver bullets, you got it made. Now, there are a couple of other little points here on your sights. Too many rear sights come out that. Sharp edges delight the machinist. Every time he can get a nice razor-sharp corner, he thinks that makes him a better mechanic. And perhaps it does, but that's not what you want. You want the corners rounded, and you want everything on the rear of the weapon rounded. Now, we'll get to that in just a moment when we talk about dehorning, but let's talk for a second about front sights, because if the action is going this way, you want a front sight that looks approximately like this. Now, this will give you all the definition you want, and you don't want something that's designed to make shade. You can get sights come on the Gold Cup that look like that. And all that does is cut your pants and rip your hand. And when you draw it out of a holster that you may not have just rightly attuned, you get a big blob of fuzz out there instead of a front sight. So avoid that sharp corner. You can break it like that on a Gold Cup and get away with it, but this is a better design. Some of the target pistols actually look like this. You can use those for bringing fish aboard if you're out at sea. But what they do here, you put one of those in this type of a rig, this yaki slide, and then you can't get it out. You've got to cut the leather. So you don't want sharp corners, you want something you can see. So we said you want a trigger that you can manage and sights that you can see. The next job, you want dehorning. Now, that varies from weapon to weapon, and it goes for both revolvers and autos, but you want a weapon that won't cut you when you do that. It's odd, but these are hand tools. Wouldn't you think that the manufacturers of hand tools would know? Now, these sharp corners back in here do nothing but draw blood. And when you use the weapon vigorously, you find up you're bleeding all over the place. But of course, the people who make guns don't use the weapon vigorously, so they don't bleed. And we have to take care of that. So all these corners are destructive. You have not only the tang here and the hammer itself, but you have the edge of the safety plate right there. Sometimes has a razor edge. Sometimes the rear edges of the safety itself are very sharp and prismatic. Must be burned off so that the rear feeling of that safety is round to your hand, not sharp. Those things are necessary. Now, from that point on, you have a lot of free choices, things that apply to you but not to somebody else. For my part, I need this grip safety blocked. Now, slightly more than half the people who shoot don't need to do that. So it comes out about 6 to 4. About 6 people can get by with a grip safety as it comes out of the box. The other 4 have to have it blocked. Some of you have already found that out and are taping it shut. Now, for practice, we just tape it. In the shop there, we can sell you a little metal clip, which will hold it in. A little trimmer to do it like this to pin it shut. It doesn't affect the safety of the weapon in the sense of its being a danger to its user. That device was put in there by John Browning because of a military commitment, a military requirement that the pistol should be carried with nothing on and yet be able to be perfectly safe and yet be able to be fired without doing anything to it. So he put in a grip safety. When you grab the gun, it makes it fireable. When you take your hand off, it's not. That was not because he thought it was a good idea. That was because the Army demanded it. But you see, in those days, nobody believed in the thumb safety. Here. They didn't think that was going to matter. So they didn't even put one on the original Browning. The grip safety was the whole thing. If you are going to use a thumb safety, the grip safety has very little effect on the action. And don't feel that if you take it out, it's going to make the weapon somehow horrible. You see, you're getting these things like home and mother. And if you tell somebody that you deactivated a safety, he goes right through the roof. Because more people who were involved with firearms are concerned with accidental discharges than they are concerned with winning the war. And they don't realize the points that I made yesterday, that safety does not come from gadgets. Safety comes between the ears. If you learn how to use your weapon properly, you don't need any gadgets. And furthermore, gadgets won't help if you don't know how to use your weapon.
Always practice Jeff Cooper's safe technique of dry firing.
Much of your work in perfecting your pistolcraft will be dry firing. You don't have to go to the range to work. You can do 3 times as much work in your bedroom or in your quarters as you do on the range and profit by that. But when you're doing dry firing, firing with an empty weapon, you have to take certain precautions. Not so much technical precautions as mental precautions. You must enable yourself to handle the problem of safety in a very systematic and invariable way. When you are working with an empty weapon in your quarters, it must, of course, not be loaded, which is a violation of the rule that weapons are always loaded. So we have to twist the situation a little bit to make it come out right. We do it like this. When you are ready for an evening session or a morning session or any kind of a training session where you're not going to shoot, go through a step-by-step drill. The first one is, of course, to get the weapon into a position in which it won't blow a hole in the wall of your room. And since your weapon is normally carried in condition 1, you unload it in that manner. Now, when you're going to work in your quarters, the next step is to take all the ammunition you have available and put it somewhere else. This magazine, this round, this magazine, there. If you're traveling, it's a good idea to put all that ammunition in your suitcase. Not because it's any safer in the suitcase than it is on the kitchen table, but because it makes a procedure which you follow without variation. Your ammunition must be separated from the weapon completely and checked again. Then, of course, when you're ready to work, you will examine the breech of the piece, check it again, and then you can try your dry firing. Your dry firing, for example, on the stroke is, for one exercise would be, grip, clear, click, smack, look, press, and then down to here and back. And then you work it smoothly. Grip, clear, click, smack, look, press. And you do that, checking yourself every time as long as you want. Now, that's just one exercise. There are 6 or 8 which you might be doing. But while you're doing them, you are in the training mode, the practice mode. Your mind is on practice. Make every effort to assure that you are not interrupted. If you can arrange it, get into a room where you can't answer the telephone, where no one is going to call you. That may not be possible, but do it if you can. Then, when you are through practice, throw a mental switch up here saying, I am no longer practicing, I am going back into the live mode. And only then, open the doors, raise the blinds, go back to where your ammunition is, and replace all the necessary equipment. If you are going to carry the weapon in condition 1, make it ready and put it away and put your spare magazine here. But now, you are no longer in the practice mode. You are in the, well, you might say, action condition, where you previously were in the practice condition. Keep those conditions mentally separated by system and by ritual. And one of the rituals is to separate the ammunition from the gun, preferably in a different room when you go into the practice mode. And only when you finish practice and you bring the 2 parts together again do you go back into the action mode. It's similar to the high explosive training where you always keep the primers separate from the explosive, except when you are actually going to blow something. Make it a ritual, follow it as a matter of custom, and you won't have any trouble.
Range Operations Manager Louis Auerbach explains the mechanics of the weapon. Unloading the weapon.
You pick a target, plant your feet, and if the request or the command or whatever the polite word for it is to unload, this is how you do it. Take out the pistol with your finger off the trigger. The first thing you do is take out the magazine and stick it behind your shooting hand, small finger. The reason for that is that you don't try and find your pocket like this and wind up with a muzzle down there. Dump it out, stick it behind your little finger, all right? The next thing you do is take the safety off with your finger off the trigger, put your hand over the slide this way, and run that slide all the way back. If there's a round in there, it'll come out in your fingers, all right? Now, you press check it. Even though you've got a round in your finger, and we're not being idiotic or puerile about this, you press check, and the way to press check, you take the tip of your thumb. Don't stick your entire thumb through there. Take the tip of your thumb and look, okay? Look. Then safety back on, magazine in, and this pistol now, for Gunsite purposes, is unloaded. If the chamber is empty for Gunsite purposes, it is unloaded. Military, some police call it half-loaded, right? But if the gun is not capable of firing, it is unloaded with an empty chamber.
Loading the weapon.
First thing you do with loading, okay? There's a magazine in, obviously. First thing you do is press check it to see if it is loaded. If there's a round in there, obviously it's loaded, okay? If there's no round in there, place your hand over there, or in you guys, your left-hander's case, this way, okay? Safety off, finger off the trigger. This mechanism is designed that it cannot fire in this position. It'll fire from about there. It's got to be almost completely in battery before this weapon will fire. But you still keep your finger off the trigger, okay? So you press check, there's nothing in there. Put your hand over there with your trigger finger straight. Put your hand over here, run it all the way, and let it go, all right? Don't help it forward. And then press check every time. If it's in the dark, stick your trigger finger in it. That way your finger's not on the trigger.
Speed load and tactical load.
The first is what we call a speed load. It will probably not be used as often as a tactical load. The speed load is, for some reason, you've run the gun dry and you have to get it reloaded to carry on fighting instantly. Either that or for mechanical malfunction. But in either case, you want to replace the magazine immediately with another magazine and carry on shooting. The speed load is done in a sequence of 4 steps. The first step is on target and the decision has been made to fire. The first step, the pistol is flipped. The right or shooting hand thumb depresses the magazine button while the weak hand grabs the spare magazine in this position. The second step, these magazines pass each other in midair, and that is the second step. Only that far the magazine is inserted at about a 40-degree angle. The third step, it is rolled around and inserted up about an inch, just to ensure that the magazine is lined up with the magazine well. The fourth step, the magazine is inserted with the palm open, the front sight is picked up again in focus, and the trigger slack is taken out, and you are once more ready to shoot. On the count of 4, that is the 4th count, and that is the speed load. The problems with teaching people to speed load is that they tend to either drop the magazine with this thumb, wasting time, motion, everything else. What you want to do is do 2 things at once. The main problem with it is to flip the pistol, have that thumb on the magazine button with a finger off the trigger, and already have a grasp on the replacement magazine. That's a speed load. The tactical reload or mag-save reload is utilized once a situation has been handled. It is apparently under control. It is a slow load, it is not a fast load. It is more an ammunition replenishment system than an instantaneous replacement system. What has happened is the operator has handled the situation, come down to the ready position with the thumb on top of the safety and the trigger finger straight. At this stage, he checks out the area, decides it is safe, finds this is a good time to reload, and probably will seek cover and concealment before doing it. Once he goes into the actual reload, the first step will be to draw the replacement magazine, switch it around past the middle finger, all the way up to the pistol. The old magazine is then drawn from the pistol, retained between thumb and forefinger, and the new magazine is inserted the same as before. This is then retained, replaced, and you now have a fresh supply of ammunition.
Malfunction of the weapon.
First malfunction clearance is what we call tap, rack, bang. It'll be triggered off by a key, pointed in at the target, the front sight is in focus, the trigger is pressed, hammer falls, and there's just a click instead of a bang. First thing, get your finger off the trigger, hit the magazine, run the slide, and back on target, and they will be around in the chamber. It's called tap, rack, bang for obvious reasons. The magazine is hit to seat it, the slide is run to strip the next round into the chamber, and then you're ready to shoot. Second malfunction, shooters pointed in at the target, cannot see the front sight because there's brass in front. This is called a smoke stack, a chimney, there's various other names for it, but the trigger, the key to the malfunction is that you cannot see the front sight. Finger straight away off the trigger, the hand is placed either like that, or like that, over the slide and catching the brass. The hand is placed over the slide either like that, or like that. The idea is to get rid of this piece of brass and to run the slide back far enough to strip the next round in. It's done that way, usually this way, finger off the trigger, and the slide is run hard, and that will give another round into the chamber and get rid of the brass in the port. The third malfunction, the key to this, you can see the front sight, you press the trigger, and absolutely nothing happens. The hammer doesn't fall, there's no reciprocal action for pressing on the trigger, nothing happens. Finger off the trigger, come down, look at the pistol to see what the problem is, and that is what you will have. It's called a double feed. The way to clear it, the first thing you do is lock back the slide. Then strip out the magazine and get rid of it. Third step is to run the slide 3 or 4 times. The fourth step, replacement magazine, insert it, run the slide again, and you're ready to go on with the walk. The trick with this thing is not to just try and pull out the magazine before locking back the slide, because you'll probably tear out your fingernail. The reason for that is that with a double feed, invariably you will have a magazine with a round like that feeding up on the feed ram. And if you try and pull out the magazine at that stage, you'll probably strip out your fingernail.
How to read your target.
Target reading is a vital aid to the shooter, because if he doesn't have the hits going where he wants them, which are normally center of mass of the target, he can read what he is doing wrong from his points of impact. The most common problem with shooters, when it's not going where they want them, are either straight down over here or to the left at about 7, 8 o'clock. The cause of this, with the low one right down, is usually this trigger slack. Not taking out the trigger slack and going straight through a couple ounces of trigger and then a couple pounds, and what happens is the muzzle dips that away. The cause of this one is either and or the same thing plus squeezing with these bottom 2 fingers of the shooting hand. What will happen if you squeeze with those bottom 2 fingers is the muzzle will dip like that. And they will wind up either there or there. The next most common problem is shots going to the left, somewhere around here, to the left of center of mass. And that is usually caused when the shooter gets the wrong grip in the holster, and instead of the gun being in line with his forearm, is canted at an angle to the forearm. When he fires, it kicks over, the pistol kicks over in the opposite direction. Number 3 problem is up there. And that is not enough weak hand, weak arm pullback. What happens when he fires, the pistol just kicks up to 1 o'clock. That needs more left arm, in the case of a right-hand shooter, more pullback with the left arm, not with the left hand, with the left arm. High shots strung out over the top here from somebody either not stopping on his draw stroke and going straight through and firing as he gets to the top of the stroke, or else not seeing his front sight at all. Just going for broke, trying to beat the whistle, trying to beat somebody else shooting back at him, and not even taking his front sight into account. So the ideal target grouping, if this is the center of mass, that is what you're shooting at. The ideal target group would be a group about that size. Anything bigger, you'd be shooting too fast for your own ability if it's a concentric group. Anything smaller than that, you're shooting too slow for your own ability and your target shooting, which is not what you want in this type of shooting. A wide group, as opposed to what I've just mentioned, a wide group strung out here, 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 and there is usually indicative of not focusing on the front sight at the moment of ignition. It's difficult to catch oneself doing it. The easiest way to avoid it is to make sure that the front sight comes back into focus immediately after the gun has fired. Then come down to the ready, then look at your target. That'll give you a big concentric group if you're looking at the target at the moment of ignition.
Cooper explains how to be accurate from the kneeling position.
The essence of the kneeling position is the prolongation of the line extending the feet, joining the feet toward the target. If, for example, I'm going to shoot in that direction, my feet are already there. So when we get you on the line, what we'll do is have you stand with your feet square. Where's your target? There. Okay, when your right hand hits your pistol, your left foot goes right there. Now, this line between the feet can be marked off by putting a stirrup there. Okay? So, if that's where I'm going to shoot, of course this is training, that's not in real life, this is getting used to it. So when I put my right hand on my pistol, I put my left foot in the stirrup, right there. Now,
When you, that's your first count, that's a count of 1. When you go into the position, you pull the holster off the pistol rather than vice versa. You don't draw the pistol, you pull the holster down. So if I'm going to go in that direction, I'm standing here, I would go 1 and 2. Now, in the position, you'll see that my feet are in line with the target. My right knee is not here, it's out to the side. I'm sitting on my heel with my toe turned under. You do that so you can dive out of it. This is a fast position. You can get into it quickly and you can get out of it quickly, but only if you keep your toe under. Your right hand straight from the shoulder. Don't get in like this. If you get your foot out that, you're going to wind up like that, which is not it. Shoot over your left knee. We get you down there, we say, that's what you have to do. Shoot over your left knee. Now, the left elbow, of course, the rest is on the left knee. Something you see pictures of in some of the police instruction academies is this. Now, what the hell's going on here? No, if you're going to go down, you put your elbow on your knee, and you put the point of the elbow in front of the knee, so you have flat on flat and don't have a ball joint like that. The left elbow is slightly in front of the knee. The head is erect, the spine is erect, the right arm is very nearly straight, and you're in one vertical plane. It's a nice, solid, comfortable position, and you can dive into it and dive out of it. If you can get into it, if you're going to take the position to get into it, the first thing you do is remember that your foot goes where you're going to shoot. If I'm going to shoot that way, I put my foot there. If I'm going to shoot that way, I'm already there. If I'm going to shoot that way, I have to swing all the way around before I get there. So the rear is even easier. You just put your left foot straight to the rear like that, and as the pistol goes down, when you get it done right, you can shoot kneeling to the rear faster than most people can quick draw once you get used to it. If you're moving, and you probably will be, remember that you have to get your feet right so that if you were caught with your right foot forward, you go ahead and put your left foot and go on down. If you are caught with your left foot forward, you skip. Avoid the tendency to step backwards with your right foot. People sometimes do that. It's a bad habit. This is a charging position. You're going forward. You step backwards, you step over the side and disappear below.
Demonstration of firing from the prone position.
First thing you do is pass upright onto the target. Your position 1, firing grip, down on your knees, left hand ready to catch. Position 2, left hand on the ground, pistol out with a safety off pointed at the target. Position 3, slide forward with a pistol pointing at the target, finger straight, safety off. Position 4, cross your legs over, firing grip, pick up the sights with the trigger slack out, and you can get elevation on your arm by moving your head up or down. You want this part of the weak hand resting flat on the carpet. Tension in the left arm. This is a normal weaver position from the waist up. And fire, hang on, and press. Come back to the kneeling position, holster in the kneeling position, and then stand up.
Darkness does not limit your ability to use your sights.
It's no surprise to anyone to understand that a great deal of violent confrontation takes place at night. Whether night means darkness is another question. Obviously, the bad guys of the world, the thieves and the bandits, prefer to work in the dark. Well, if they have a choice, that's when the confrontation will take place. But that need not disturb anyone who is familiar with the instrumentation, the pistol you are using. In the first place, there are all sorts of half-light situations, and that is where most of this happens. If you read the FBI records, for example, you will say that they consider anything that takes place between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. as daylight, and anything that takes place between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. as night. But clearly that doesn't have anything to do with the ambient light. You can be in a floodlit stadium at midnight and it's broad daylight. And you can be in the lower deck of a warehouse at noon and it can be pitch dark. So statistics mean nothing. If someone tells you that 67.38% of fatal gunfights take place at night, you have to go further and say, what do you mean by night? Nonetheless, we accept the problem that you do expect to have these actions in the dark, and what shall you do about that? What shall you do about the fact that you don't shoot in broad daylight? I've heard a number of people who should have known better say that, well, you know, the light was poor, so I couldn't be expected to hit anything. We're going to attack that problem right now. We're going to take you down to the range and show you that as the light decreases, you do not necessarily lose your capacity to hit your target. Now, remembering Rule 4, identify your target, you must admit that you're not going to shoot at something you can't see at all. You have no justification for shooting at something you can't see at all. If you're closed inside a packing house with the door shut and you can't see your hand, you can't shoot because you don't know whom you're shooting at. So you must remember that you move down through the dark into different areas of cognizance, different areas of awareness, different areas of vision. And as the light decreases, we will show you that you can handle the problem. Now, the strong point I wish to make tonight is that as the light decreases, you go right ahead with the same principles you've been using all this time. You know, up to now, in your dry practice, we've shown you how to do the eyes-off stroke. You see an enemy there, you got him. Now, in semi-darkness, that works very well. In full darkness, you haven't got a reference point to index on. But full darkness is extremely unlikely. The fact that the sun's down, the fact that it's midnight doesn't usually mean full darkness, because under conditions of full darkness, neither you nor your adversary knows what he's shooting at. So as the light decreases, what you do is you use exactly the same techniques you've been using all along. Use exactly the same techniques in half light as you do in broad daylight, and you will find that they work very well. You'll also find something else. I have heard it adduced in argument that, well, it was so dark that when the gun went off, it blinded me. I ask you to condition yourself, look and see if the discharge of your pistol blinded you. That is horseradish. It's an excuse used by a person who hasn't anything else to say. It doesn't work like that. So what we will do is shoot at normal circumstances, normal conditions, normal circumstances, using the daylight situation as the light decreases. And as it decreases, you will see that your effectiveness stays right where it should be. Remember that as the light goes down, you use plan A, which is what you've been learning up to now. At such time as the light goes out, you shift to plan B, but don't shift too soon. Now, what is plan B? Plan B is artificial illumination provided by yourself. This is the flashlight situation. And I must point out that historical cases in which people shot efficiently by means of a flashlight are very seldom. They're very rare. You don't hear about them very much. They do, however, work. Many years ago, we started the shooting night contests. And I noticed that the people who run contests today have dropped that because they figure they can't maintain control in the dark, which is possible. You know, you find people running down the range and paste up the wrong holes and so on. If you get phonies like that, you have to put a latch around their ankle. No, but there is a situation in which you might possibly have to shoot in full dark. Now, this would not be a normal defensive situation because you don't wander around with a pistol in your hand and a flashlight. That's an abnormal situation. That's a situation in which something has given you to understand that you have a really nasty scene here, and it's down in the basement. All right, that happens, and we'll give you a couple of hints on how to use that. If that happens, if the lights go out completely, you can use a modification of the Weaver technique to get very good hits, aided by a flashlight. Remember, it's distinctly Plan B. It's not your first choice ever, mainly because you won't have a flashlight in your hand when the flag flies. You probably won't. If you have a flashlight in your hand, it will mean that you have been warned. And being warned is the exception rather than the rule. Ordinarily, when the thing comes to you, you won't have any warning. Nonetheless, we have a system. This system was worked out by a faculty member, a friend of ours, back in California when we started having night shoots. It works pretty well. There are other systems, and they work all right. But the system we're going to show you was tested 3 years ago by 2 graduate members of this establishment, and it worked like a charm. Used by 2 members of the LA SWAT team in Los Angeles 3 years ago. So we not only know that it works on paper, in contest, it actually works on the street. Flashlight. We suggest you use one of this description, which is tube-shaped and portable, and has a switch which allows you to turn it on or off on pressure. If I put my hand on that button, I get a light. If something causes me to drop the light, it goes off. That's important. You don't want to use a light which will stay on if you drop it. Obviously, it's going to be pointing in the wrong direction, or it could be. So we suggest a light of this type. Now, the reverse system, which we'll show you, is obvious by the fact that I am not carrying the light in the regular way with the lens toward my thumb. I'm carrying the light with the lens away from my thumb. Now, preferably, by choice, you hold the light as I'm holding this now, and you actuate the button with your little finger, on, off, on, off. If I want the light, I press the button. If I don't want the light, I just let go, and it goes out. Now, keep this in mind. If you're hunting, you're not going to turn the light on to illuminate yourself and say, hey, is there anybody down here? Bang, up the face. You're not going to do that. You come down the stairs into the basement, and you are not aware of what's going on, and it's black as the ace of spades. So you hold the light as I've held it here, and your firing position is there. It's a modification of Weaver. You see, I lock the bones of my wrist together, and the metacarpals here are at right angles with each other. The bones of my firing hand are going fore and aft. The bones of my support hand are going up and down. I crack my wrist back like that, and that way I can get, in the first place, a certain amount of push-pull, as in Weaver, and in the second place, I can get a certain sense of parallelism between the barrel of the gun and the tube of the light, so that when I put the light on, my pistol is pointing right there. Look over there on the wall. When I put my light on, when I flip the light, so I can see my sights silhouetted against that. I have the situation under control because I push-pull. I keep my left elbow down, but when I turn the light on, I can see my sights. Now, that works fine. When you push the light, you have an illumination spot there, and against that spot, let's put it over here, against that spot you can see your sight picture. And when you can see it, you've got it. Now, remember that you don't keep that light on. The stroke is from here. You're hunting in the basement or outdoors in a dark, rainy night, and when you suspect something, you can go search down. Now, if that light is on when you pick up a target, there he is, bang, and light off. Immediately following the shot, let go with your left hand, the light goes out. You doubtless have heard people tell you that the way to carry a flashlight is out here. The notion being that if you put the light out here, you see, the enemy is going to shoot back, and he's going to be such a good shot, he's going to shoot right around here. Of course, he may break your wrist, but the point is he won't get you. Wrong. The idea is not so much to protect you as to get him down. And the light out here doesn't give you any support, any Weaver-type support, and it's difficult to coordinate with the barrel of your weapon. Obviously, if you can put the light on over on the wall, you can see your sights against that light from here. But we do not favor this because it doesn't give you the attack situation that the Weaver stance gives you, and you don't shoot as well, especially under pressure. So that is the way we suggest you do it. The only way you're going to get this in true practice is to find yourself a closed room somewhere and pull down the blinds, shut all the shutters, snap off the lights, and work indoors. You can get an indoor situation dark enough to require this. Again, it's planned for a normal situation. And when I waited and waited and waited for years for it to happen on the street, I was hoping that I'd find a case in which we use it, because we knew it worked in contests, but we didn't know that it worked on the street. And finally it happened over in L.A., and it was a really, really dark night. And this really unspeakable fellow, a guy who committed things that, you know, we wouldn't like to talk about, came out the back door of a hospital, the back alley. And the combination of no artificial light, no street lights, and no illumination from the sky, you know, a smoggy night in Los Angeles with no stars, no moon. It was really dark. I mean, black. Well, he had collared a couple of nurses, and he dragged them out with him, and he got into a car with one nurse on each side of him, and nobody could see anything. Well, our hero graduate, Gunsite graduate, using exactly the system I've been explaining to you here, pitch dark, approached the car from the left rear, and when the situation was right, he came through the rear window, turned the light on, and he was right there. Well, there was no question about the provocation in this case, and he shot this bird through the barrel with a .45 ACP hardball, which took care of him once and for all. But the thing that I think is charming about this is that bullet, after having gone through the felon's chest, went on and went into the left leg of the nurse who was sitting outside on the starboard side. And her reaction to the situation was to lean over her shoulder and say, "Hit him again, make sure he's dead." Good girl. It does work, and we now have that example from the street.
Run. Here we go. Stand by.
Felt too low.
Everybody knows when the light gets bad, you're helpless, right? Might as well take the sights off the gun because you can't shoot, right?
No.
You guys don't look too helpless to me.
We hope you have enjoyed what you have seen. It is obvious that the pistol, like any other art, is not going to be acquired by watching a film. Nonetheless, you have a good understanding of how it's done, and we hope you have benefited by that experience.
Remember, preparedness and confidence show and have in actual confrontations been sufficient to shut off an attack before it started. Be prepared. Make sure you obtain a complete set of Jeff Cooper tapes.